Hello and welcome. Good evening. You're watching The Money Show. It's India's only daily money show where we get experts to answer all of your queries on how to get even more wealthy. Good evening. I'm Nantara Rai in New Delhi. My colleague Vaibhav joining in from the Mumbai studio. Every Thursday, The Money Show is dedicated to real estate and all the grievances home buyers are facing. Hi, Avan.
Absolutely, Nayantara, and we've been getting so many questions or queries, so attention there to all of the home buyers. If you're stuck, if you have questions, queries, please feel free to connect with us. There's an email address as well as a number that's flashing at the top of your screens. In fact, Nayantara, let's, without any further ado, bring on board our very special guest joining in today on the show, who's going to alleviate all of those concerns as well as address questions. Vaibhav Gaggar, Managing Partner, Gaggar and Partners, is joining us on the show. Thanks so much for being with us today. I just want to start off then by getting in your thoughts and your views, because the IBC, the government clearing the ordinance, amending the same, it recognizes home buyers, of course, as financial creditors to real estate developers. And of course, home buyers have now a chance to cheer on the back of that because of the representation that they'll get. Can you just give us your initial thoughts as to what the reality has been and how one should read into this development?
And Avan, if I could just come in there, Vaibhav, throw some color into the fact that you've got the IBC, which has empowered home buyers. But how do you read that with the other landmark legislation, the special legislation that we had for this sector, the RERA? Is there confusion? What should one do? Should they invoke RERA or should they invoke IBC?
So a couple of things. While it's a very big step to get the ordinance through in the IBC, one must realize that there appears to be a slight conflict in RERA with IBC. Reason I say that is, if Section 14 of IBC gets, kicks in, the moratorium kicks in, then even proceedings under RERA come to a standstill. So what are we fighting for? I mean, as a home buyer, what is it really looking at? He's saying, give me my possession normally or give me my money back. Now, within IBC itself, default has been defined, but default is very different for a home buyer and there's no amendment that has been made. So when does a home buyer really kick in and start the insolvency proceeding? When does the default really happen? Is it to be taken from the RERA angle, which has not been mentioned per se? There is going to be ambiguity in that. Let me assume for a moment that it kicks in when a home buyer says, give my money back, cancel the project, give my money back. That's clearly a debt which has been defined. Within RERA as well and within IBC as well, that would come into play. So fine, he falls within the waterfall and comes towards the top of the waterfall. That becomes clear. But if a home buyer is proceeding in RERA and saying, give me my possession, in that case, IBC actually doesn't really kick in. Now imagine a situation where you've got a bunch of home buyers who want their money back. They invoke the IBC post-cancellation. The moratorium kicks in, and there is another bunch of home buyers of the same project who are actually fighting in RERA, saying, give us our possession and compensation. It is going to lead to total ambiguity, and interestingly, the way I read it, IBC has a non-obstante clause, which means that the moratorium is going to be prioritized, which means that proceedings under RERA are actually going to come to a halt. If that be the case, then I'm not too sure, this is exactly what the home buyers were hoping or expecting. I'm not too sure it's really been thought through in that respect as well.
Before I get into the first viewer query, Vaibhav, very quickly, because this is a show that's dedicated to the viewer queries, just from a legal standpoint, and we do get a lot of queries on this. The very fact that the Insolvency Bankruptcy Code was amended after the RERA came into force, wouldn't that be the more important law, the one that supersedes RERA in that sense?
So exactly what I said. The insolvency, according to me, is going to supersede the RERA, and therefore the moratorium is going to hit everybody, even people who are proceeding within RERA for their, for the project to be delivered to them. Or let's look at a situation where, you've got 70% of the money which is deposited in a bank, right? As per RERA, that's supposed to happen. Or the consumers are coming together to try and build the project because the developer is refusing to. But that has to come to a standstill because the resolution process is underway now, and that moratorium is going to continue. So I'm not too sure the RERA angle is getting justified over here. Very importantly, the central government has the right under Section 14 itself of IBC to actually make an exemption for sectoral regulators. If that had been done, RERA would have continued as well, but that's not been done yet.
Someone who's just been tracking the insolvency and bankruptcy court since it's come into force, and before that when you had other animals like CDR, SDR, I've got a bigger issue with the fact that the government thinks that all thousands and thousands and thousands of home buyers or one project can actually speak in one voice and actually have one point of view. You have a situation where, look at the large NPAs, you can't even get some of the country's leading banks, public sector, private sector, to agree on a resolution plan. I think it's quite difficult to expect that from the home buyers. But that's my personal observation. Let's get down to viewer queries. The first one's coming in from an email, and it has nothing to do with RERA or IBC. This is from Anubhav Gupta, who writes, why is it the rent agreement is generally for 11 months? Why is that the case, Vaibhav? 11 months?
Because if it is for more than 11 months, then it needs to be registered. Any document which is for more than 11 months for a lease needs to be registered. If it is 11 months, it becomes a month-to-month tenancy, whereby actually the provisions become very different. You can issue a notice, and the procedure that is followed under the Transfer of Property Act kicks in under 106 of the Transfer of Property Act. So it's a quicker process that way. But the terms of the lease cannot be read if it is more than 11 months and it has not been registered. Therefore, a lot of people, as practice, just make it 11 months so that the terms of the lease can still be read without having to go through registration.
All right, I hope we were able to answer that query of yours, Anubhav. That was an interesting question. Well, we've got questions covering all spheres of real estate, RERA, etc., the IBC, and I'm reaching out to all of our viewers. If you're tuned in, if you've got any questions or queries, well, please feel free. Vaibhav Gaggar is with us over the next half hour or so. You can have your questions answered. Well, we've got another question that's been sent in to us from Arvind Kumar. He says, the Supertech North Eye project in Noida has been excessively delayed. What should I as a home buyer do? What is the remedy? Should I, absolve this by going to the RERA route? And this is something that we were discussing. Our email inboxes are flooded with questions from viewers asking what they should do, what the right course of action is when projects are excessively delayed, which is something that they've been so accustomed to. What's the best legal advice that you would have? Is, RERA the right way to go?
So first and foremost, every consumer needs to figure out, does he want to pursue trying to get possession of the property, or alternatively, does he want to cancel the allotment and get his money back with interest? Because strategically, both courses are totally different. Now, if you want to pursue and get possession, you need to get into RERA. I mean, you don't have an option. It is the right way to do, presuming that the project is registered under RERA. However, if you're looking at a cancellation and your money back, now you've got the option actually of looking at the IBC, as we were just discussing, and that is a serious pressure on any builder. He doesn't want to go through that route either. It's a 180-day process. You are at the top of the waterfall, so as to say. I mean, you're below the secured creditor, but you're above the banks and the financial institutions, so you've got a good chance of getting your money out as well. But fundamentally, need to be very clear. You can't sail in both boats. You'll have to choose, do you want possession? If yes, go to RERA. If not, you want your money back, think about the IBC.
Okay, so that's advice that is coming in. I do hope it's useful. I also just want to tell our viewers that our phone lines are open. The number's on your screens right on top over there. So make the phone call if you want to get some free legal advice. That's the best way to describe it. I'm going to move on to the next queries coming in from a Kamakya Narayan Pandey. I paid full amount and waited for possession for my flat F4 407, so that's the address, at Unitech Sector 117 in Noida. How long can it take? Vaibhav, this is an issue I think home buyers have across the country, from north to south, east to west. But there is a problem with this particular builder as well. The promoters have been languishing in jail for over a year and a half. The government tried to take over this company. That didn't work out at the Supreme Court. Once again, home buyers not able to come together, speak in one voice. This is a very unfortunate case, and a peculiar one when it comes to Unitech in particular.
With the Supreme Court being seized of the matter, and really one is at a loss to say what is the right route over here, because the builder is not going to perform anymore. That's quite clear. The government, as you rightly pointed out, tried to step in. That did not work out. Under RERA, you could have a situation where you've got, the consumers forming a lobby and taking over a project and completing the project. So that's something that could be very seriously evaluated. Under the IBC as well, you've got a resolution process which is possible. Now, within that, unless the consumers come together and speak in one voice, which frankly doesn't happen very often, it's not really going to lead to a very logical conclusion. The only remedy I see, honestly, is if the consumers can come together, take over the construction of the project. And that's something I believe that even the courts would look at sympathetically. They would give their backing to this. As long as it's totally transparent and audited, that is the only way you're going to get your possession in these kind of matters. I mean, in terms of putting pressure on the developer, trying to get him, to deliver possession, that's happened with some builders. It's not going to happen with Unitech anymore. I mean, the Supreme Court has also tried everything that it could have. Get the consumers together, build the project.
Okay, I hope, Mr. Pandey, we were able to answer your question. Well, now, when it comes to financing, we have a question, and this has been sent in to us by Mr. Pramod Patel. He says, why should buyers pay the EMI when the flat is not the flat in the building is not as per the plan, and all the government bodies and banks are responsible not only to detect EMIs? What would you like to tell him?
So I believe recently there has been some discussion of this even in the Supreme Court, and there has been an order to say that actually the banks are not going to be getting the EMI if there is going to be a fraudulent deal over there, or if there is something which is not kosher, where you can look at collusion, or you can sense that there is collusion between the banks and the real estate developer, because the buyers certainly should not be burdened with the rentals as well as the EMI over there. Now, if that thought process goes through further, the problem in the entire system actually is that 7 out of 10 times we have seen that there isn't due diligence that is done. Bank loans are given based on relationships with certain developers, and you've got NPAs happening left, right and center currently. This particular collusion actually needs to be investigated very deeply, and you would be surprised to see what kind of nonsense has been going on in the sector. The banks until now have been actually kept out of the purview, and it's the the builders who are being lambasted, rightly so perhaps. But the conspiracy that is very deep rooted here is going to get unearthed. I believe there are a lot of movements on this issue as well. And once that happens, I don't think the banks are going to get any sympathy out of the courts either. I don't think you're going to be forced to file, keep giving your EMIs if the permissions, etc., are not there. And if you are aware that the permissions are not there, then actually you need to get to court very quickly, or make your objections and protests in place, because you are otherwise giving credence to an illegal transaction by continuing with the transaction. So you need to look into your documents. You need to be very sure that the permissions are there, and if they are not there, please take immediate action.
Right, so with that, we'll take a short commercial break. We've answered a couple of queries, but stay tuned. This is the Home Buyer Special. We're getting your queries on Facebook, Twitter, email. You can also call us live. We'll be back in less than 2 minutes.
Thanks for staying on with us. This is the Home Buyer Special right here on ET Now. I'm Vaibhav with Nayantara Rai, and of course our special guest today answering all your questions and queries is Vaibhav Gaggar, Managing Partner, Gaggar and Partners. Well, we have our phone lines buzzing away. Let's get straight to our live caller. Raj Sharma is joining in from Noida. Hi Raj, thanks so much for connecting with us on ET Now. Tell us, what's your question?
Hello ma'am. मैं राज शर्मा बोल रहा हूँ नोएडा से।
हाँ जी बोलिए।
मैम मैंने ये 2010 में मैंने अपनी एक फ्लैट बुक किया था सुपरटेक में।
कहाँ पे?
सुपरटेक।
ओके।
तो अभी तक पोजीशन नहीं मिला है मुझे, और मैंने 100% पेमेंट उसको कर दिया है। तो कुछ ऐसा कोई रास्ता है कि जिससे मैं उसको कंप्लेन कर सकूं, या कुछ ऐसा हो सकता है?
ठीक है। Okay. That is Raj's question. We just had a query on Supertech Notai, which is in Noida. If you could just help out our viewer here and tell him what course of action he could take in Vaibhav, if it's possible to respond in Hindi.
राजी, आपका अगर आपने 100% पैसा भी दे दिया है, तो आप प्लीज़ इसमें या तो रेरा में जाइए एंड या फिर कंज्यूमर फोरम में जाइए। अगर वो रेरा का रजिस्टर्ड प्रोजेक्ट नहीं है तो आई एम नॉट श्योर वो स्पेसिफिक प्रोजेक्ट रजिस्टर्ड है या नहीं है। साइमल्टेनियसली आपको वेरी सीरियसली देखना चाहिए अगर इसमें आप क्रिमिनल केस कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये क्रिमिनल ब्रीच ऑफ ट्रस्ट एंड फ्रॉड का केस भी बन सकता है। इसमें आज के दिन काफ़ी जजमेंट्स भी आए हैं कि इस तरह के ट्रांजैक्शंस जो होते हैं वो फ्रॉडुलेंट भी माने जा सकते हैं। तो आपको जल्द से जल्द दोनों एक्शंस साइमल्टेनियसली करने चाहिए, या तो कंज्यूमर फोरम / रेरा एंड क्रिमिनल एक्शन।
तो एक मिनट, सो वैभव आप कह रहे हो कि इधर क्रिमिनल एक्शन करो या रेरा करो?
वो दोनों साइमल्टेनियस हो सकते हैं नयनतारा। आप क्रिमिनल एक्शन और सिविल एक्शन साइमल्टेनियसली कर सकते हैं। रेरा / कंज्यूमर फोरम, डिपेंडिंग अगर वो रेरा में रजिस्टर्ड है या नहीं है प्रोजेक्ट, साइमल्टेनियसली उसके साथ साथ ही आप क्रिमिनल एक्शन भी कर सकते हैं, या तो कोर्ट जाके कर सकते हैं या फिर आप पुलिस में भी जो है कंप्लेंट फाइल कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि ये फ्रॉड का केस माना जाता है। आप जरा देखें बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट में रिसेंटली ये जजमेंट भी आया हुआ है कि ऐसे केसेस फ्रॉड के माने जाते हैं।
चलो, आई होप रावत जी आप सहमत है उसके साथ। या our phone lines are open, so all of you can call. This is the home buyer special on ET now. We've got another 10-15 minutes left. I'm going to move on to the next query that we got. We got this one on Facebook. Tej Narayan, I invested in, again, Unitech Homes 3, and took a loan from Punjab National Bank for 37 lakhs in 2012. However, the builder, that's the Chandras, have not even started my tower in which my flat was supposed to be built. Now the Chandra brothers are in Tihar jail, while people like me are sincerely paying EMI since 2012, and the bank keeps increasing the amount. Vaibhav, you know, this is a problem that so many lakhs of people are facing. I'm not talking just specifically about Unitech. No sign of the project. However, there is a bank loan, and you know, please answer this question. And then my follow-on question on behalf of other thousands and lakhs of buyers is there any way for them to get relief from the banks? Because a lot of these banks were the ones that also, if I may say so, endorsed the project.
So Nantara, as I had mentioned earlier as well, 7 out of 10 times you will see that there is collusion between the bank and the builder. When the loans were sanctioned, due diligence was not conducted, all the permissions were not in place, but as a consumer you've gone ahead and you have entered into a transaction believing everything is kosher, because a recognized bank is also willing to offer you a loan at that point of time. If you are able to do your due diligence even at this stage, and you can show that there is a conspiracy which is there, I can't imagine that the courts are not going to step in to help out that consumer or that customer. You will have to take the banks on head on over here. In the case of Unitech, for instance, I think it may be well worth evaluating if with the proceedings which are already pending in the Supreme Court, if one can intervene over there and seek the, you know, the court's attention really to say this is a much larger issue, this needs to be rested. You could also seek a stay against the bank's EMIs by taking the bank to the consumer forum or to the banking regulator to say that they have been actually negligent in their duty, they have held out something which was not fair or which was not actually legal. You would have to do your due diligence before that, however, to show that the bank was hand in glove. On the other hand, flip side, if it was a totally kosher project, if it was a totally legitimate project, then you can't really blame the bank if the developer has defaulted either. I mean, you know, you've got to balance the interests out over there. If the bank has done its due diligence and rightly sanctioned the loans, in that case it becomes a controversial issue. Who stands, you know, to lose more? However, I do believe with the recent attitude of the courts as well as the government, and you can see that in the IBC, the interests of the consumers are being put at least on par, if not higher than that of the banks currently. And that is something that, you know, you can take to court and you can expect some sympathy out of this.
So I
but
think
please do your due diligence even today and see what's behind this.
Yeah, I think it's up to you to really do the due diligence. It's a big question mark as to whether the banks as well are hand in glove, and then you can take the legal steps accordingly. We have Adesh Bhatnagar. He's with us on the phone line from New Delhi. Our phone lines are open. There's a number at the bottom of your screens and at the top as well. Please dial in. Adesh, welcome to the show. What's your query?
Thank you. Yes, I've got an order from RERA for Wave City Center. to pay me interest on the invested amount with them within 45 days of the order and give me possession of the project on the 30th of June.
Okay.
Now, promoter has disregarded the order as 45 days are already over and the project is nowhere being completed by 30th of June.
Okay.
Can the promoter get away with it, or what should I do?
Yeah,
What is my
so-
next step?
Okay, that's an interesting question. What's the course of action that he should take now? The 45-day period is over. The possession has not come. The flat is looking nowhere to being completed. What does one do in a case like this? And big question, can the promoter get away with it?
So I don't think the promoter can get away with this at all. There are provisions within the RERA itself which actually provide for serious penalties, including imprisonment for violation of the orders. And if the promoter or the developer does not go ahead and challenge it or get it set aside, then he's really going to be in trouble. So post 30th of June, once the cause of action kicks in, you must file as per the provisions for the penalty to be imposed and for the imprisonment provisions to be invoked immediately.
I'm going to come in there, and if, Adesh Bhatnagar is still with us, I do remember this particular viewer had called in last week and had sent us feedback. He was not happy with the response. I'm just going to spend a little more time with it because, the viewer is making an effort to call the second time round. He's talking about Wave. They're, of course, based in Noida. The Chaddas, which have roots with the alcohol business as well. It's very easy to say file a case. Let's be honest about that. But what can one do? Is that really going to settle it?
Nentara, what can a person do but go to courts and actually action law and the provisions which are provided there? Now, currently with the media also actually focusing upon how the RERA is functioning and, the way earlier strong arm tactics were being used, with that being in focus, a lot of the pressure tactics have gotten diluted. So he may be a really strong man or a really strong promoter, but we have seen a lot of other very strong promoters, Unitech being a case in point. They were not small people by any stretch of imagination, being taken to the court and justice actually coming forth over there. Even today, the authorities are struggling to find a solution. I'm not saying that the solution will be there and everything will be hunky-dory, but there are enough safeguards today for a consumer to take it to court, whether it is in terms of the RERA provisions, whether it is in terms of other proceedings, including the IBC. If you've got a decree in your favor and he does not actually give you the interest and the damages or possession, you could also invoke the IBC because that would amount to a default. Now, with these provisions, the courts have, the legislations have actually provided a number of safeguards which are there, and I would not go so far as to say merely because it's a strong promoter, therefore you should actually worry and not, pursue your legal remedies. We have seen enough and more cases in the last 3 to 4 years, especially where consumers have come up on top of really strong promoters. And there's no reason that it's not going to happen now. Plus, things are moving a lot quicker than they used to. I mean, I would like to ask Adesh, how long did it take for him to get this verdict in RERA? Because earlier, 5 years back, if he would have been talking, there was no hope in hell that he was going to get a verdict in his favor.
How long did it take you, Adesh Bhatnagar? How long did it take you?
Just about a year.
That's as good as it gets in most jurisdictions across the world, by the way. And I mean, if it was going to be a really strong promoter and you had to be worried about it, Adeshi, then you wouldn't have gotten this verdict either. So please don't be pessimistic and go for your legal remedies. I don't think he can get away scot-free at all.
Okay. I do hope this time round you're happy with the advice you've got. This is the second time this particular viewer is calling in with the same query. We're completely out of time. Many thanks for watching, but if you still have queries, come to our Facebook page. We will be doing a Facebook Live right now with Vaibhav Gaggar. Many thanks for watching.